Chapter 7, the urinary system. You see pretty much the entire system depicted in this diagram. Of course, if you'll recall from cardiovascular chapter, blue is veins and red are arteries. So you see these coming out the middle. This is the blue thing you see in the middle of the blue structure is, of course, the ascending vena cava. And next to it, the red structure is the descending aorta. And it's a good illustration to show the bifurcation of those two vessels right at the pelvic level. So, however, that's off topic. What we're really looking at here are the kidney, the uterus, the bladder, urethra, and this bottom word we'll explore a little bit later, but it looks like it might be pronounced urinary meatus. It's actually pronounced meatus, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So, in a little bit more detail, in the urinary system, the structures that we are going to be looking at, and more specifically, are two kidneys, two uterus, one urinary bladder, one urethra, and one urinary meatus. And although you don't see urinary before the term bladder, we're going to use it to be more specific during the chapter. You have several bladders in your body. As we learned in the last chapter, we have something called the gallbladder. And there are other bladders that exist as well. So when we say bladder, most people think of urinary bladder, and that's the tendency. We want to be more specific because we are being medical here. So we're going to say specifically the urinary bladder. So the urinary system function. This is a fascinating system that filters and removes waste products and excess fluid from the blood, and it regulates fluid and electrolyte balance in the body. So two very important things. You need enough water to stay hydrated. You don't need too much water. If you have too much water in your body, that will dilute the amount of electrolytes you have. To be specific, electrolytes are salts that help in electrical conduction. They're extremely important in conduction of muscles and the function of muscles. So electrolytes consist of salts, so basic sodium. Potassium is an electrolyte. Those are our two main ones. Forms of glucose are electrolytes that also help this, although they have multiple functions. But I'd say sodium and potassium are probably the two major electrolytes we're talking about. There are others, but those are the major ones. The kidneys function not only to filter blood, but to regulate the amount of water relative to the amount of electrolytes in the body so things stay balanced. And that is a concept called homeostasis, and it's a very important concept. This is a state of balance and equilibrium in the internal body. It's necessary for the cells to survive and carry out their functions effectively. I want to be clear on this, that homeostasis is not static. And we see the word stasis here, and if we put pertaining to on it, we could say homeostatic. And static sounds like it's something that's stationary. And it doesn't really mean that. Although, and so it's kind of confusing using that suffix with this word. But what it really is referring to is a constantly shifting paradigm of how the relationships of different body systems work. If you have too much water in your system and not enough electrolytes, that could cause a cardiac condition. If you have too many electrolytes and not enough water, that's dehydration. Well, that's going to put pressure on the kidneys and other organs. Homeostasis is the idea that all things remain in balance. Your body is constantly shifting around this idea depending on your food intake, your calorie intake, your amount of exercise a day. All sorts of things affect it. How warm it is outside. Everything in our environment can have some effect on homeostasis. And the concept of homeostasis is your body regulating that and keeping a balance so that you stay healthy. Homeostasis happens throughout the entire body, but the kidneys are very, very important to that balance. And we'll explore that a little bit. We're going to give you another compound word today, genitourinary. It's abbreviated GU. If we break it down, airy is pertaining to. Genito is the combining form for genitals, and uro for urine or urinary tract. So genitourinary system is a system that's pertaining to the genital and urinary structures or systems combined. So you're probably quite aware they do share the same space in the body, and they share functions. And we're going to explore the function of the urinary system in this chapter. And our next set of chapters, which are going to be two chapters together, there's two parts of chapter 8, which will be our next lecture after this one, and that'll be covering the female and the male reproductive systems. And we'll get into more of the genito part of that phrase in those chapters. A medical specialty when it comes to the urinary system is urology. This is the study of the urinary system in females and the genitourinary system in males. And this is why it's important that we just gave you that term. So if you're going to go see a urologist and you're a female, they're going to be looking only at the urinary system. So let's say frequent urinary tract infections. But let's say a female is looking for advice on reproductive health because they're trying to become pregnant and can't. They're not going to see a urologist. However, the males go to urology for the genitourinary system. So if a male is referred to a urology practice, they may have a urinary issue or urinary tract issue. They may also have or otherwise have a reproductive issue. And urologists can handle those issues for males, both issues. For females, no. And for females, it's the urinary system only. Hence, we have the term genitourinary. So, a urologist is someone who practices urology. They are a specialist in the study of the urinary system only in females. However, the genitourinary system in males. So we have a couple of combining forms here for urine. A uro is one of them. Urino is the other. So uro often refers to urine itself, the byproduct of the urinary tract. Urino often refers to the urinary tract as a whole. Urinary means pertaining to urine, containing or secreting urine, and that is basically the whole process that we're dealing with here. And when we describe urine specifically, what it is excess water and excess electrolytes, if you should have excess electrolytes in your body at the time, along with some other toxic things that your body needs to get rid of. This is just one way they can eliminate it. It all happens in something called the nephron. And the nephron is a fascinating little unit. They're the smallest functional unit in the kidney. They're designed to filter waste products and excess water from the blood. There are hundreds of thousands of these in the kidney. You want to preserve all of them. They're like the alveoli in the lungs. They're where exchange happens, and it's very, very important that you keep urinary health and kidney health. It's extremely important in people who have diabetes and also diabetes and or hypertension. As I mentioned before, blood pressure at 110/70 in the arm is extremely higher when you get to something like the nephron. And it needs to be to perform its function. However, if you have a blood pressure of 210/160, the pressure in the kidney, especially on the nephron and those capillary beds, is enough to make that capillary bed burst. And that is why kidney health is so very important when we talk about hypertension, and also diabetes has a profound effect on the kidneys that makes it very difficult for them to do their job. So the nephron is the smallest unit. You can see it's in the calyce of the kidney, and that's the area that we're looking at there. And you're looking at to the right of that, you're looking at a enlarged version of what a nephron looks like. So we'll take a little bit closer look here. Nephrons are about reabsorption. This is the process by which essential substances are reabsorbed into the bloodstream. So I'm going to give you a brief rundown on what this looks like. So I'm going to use my mouse here. Here you have what's called the glomerulus. This is a capsule that it's also referred to as Bowman's capsule. But you have every nephron has its own glomerulus, and it is a capsule of high pressure that allows a capillary bed to come in. So as the capillary bed comes in this way under extremely high pressure, excess water and any toxins or any extra electrolytes the body needs to get rid of are drained into this capsule. This capsule goes into the proximal tubule, which you see here. That descends into the loop of Henle, which is down here. It comes into the distal tubule on this side. It wraps back around and it exits here, and this is where it drains. So this is actually urine production in itself. As the fluid descends down into the loop of Henle, it's going into an area of very high salinity, usually on one side of the nephron. So high salinity means a lot of salt. What is that going to do? That salt is going to pull the fluid through that semi-permeable membrane out into an area surrounding the capillary bed. And that capillary bed that you see here depicted in red, it's going to reabsorb the water that it needs to reabsorb so that your body remains in a homeostatic state. As the fluid passes further through the loop of Henle, As it descends down here, it gets highly salinic, so a lot of fluid's being pulled out. And as it comes back up on this side, there is some reabsorption of water that happens. Because of the high salinic state on one side, there might be more water extracted than is necessary. More water might be added in as it goes back up the ascending side. And of course, the water on this side, once again, that's being reabsorbed is happening through the capillary beds. And there is some reabsorption here. Along with that travels excess electrolytes. So let's say you just drank a bunch of Gatorade, but you didn't sweat out a bunch of electrolytes. You have not done a workout. You're just having a nice casual day in the air conditioning, and you drink Gatorade as a soft drink without replacing electrolytes because you haven't burned any up. Well, all the electrolytes that are added to that product to restore electrolytes, you will urinate right back out because your body doesn't need them. Versus if you're out on a very hot day and you've sweated a lot, and let's say you've gone for a run and a bike ride and you've done a lot of work, Gatorade as a way to replenish electrolytes is one way to go. Water and other simple things like a banana or peanuts can do the same thing because they will provide you with sodium and potassium. The point here is that there's a lot of pressure in this capsule. It forces the fluid down through here. The high salinity extracts things it needs to get rid of. The electrolytes and the byproducts and the waste products will stay in that tubule and will be excreted out along with excess water. So that's what the process of reabsorption is all about. Pardon me, I just had some sort of update come in. And it doesn't want to change slides for me, so I'm going to do this. Give me just a moment. There we go. Okay, so now you know a little bit about the nephron. When you study anatomy and physio, you are going to learn a lot about the nephron, so be prepared for that. I've given you a very simple explanation of it. Meato is a term that means opening. I pointed this out earlier. Meatus is an opening or passageway, and this is especially one that's leading to the body surface, and of course it's intentional. And we have the urinary meatus in the urinary tract, and this is the external opening of the urethra. So this is the portal through which urine passes into the outside world and through which one would void excess urine in order to get rid of those waste products and the excess water in the body. Odd place for this to come up. We're about to go into the kidney. This slide happens to be placed right here, so we're just going to cover it right now. And I think we've already hit this concept, but I want to go over it one more time. Benign versus malignant. Benign is non-cancerous or non-life-threatening. Malignant is cancerous or life-threatening. So those are the two differentials. And we're talking about, you know, masses and tumors and such. I currently am studying cross-sectional anatomy here in the summer of 2020. The images I'm studying a lot right now look exactly like what you're looking at here. That big, large object off to the left is the liver. You may wonder why it's on the opposite side. Well, we're looking at it from the anatomical point of view. So from the anatomical point of view, that is on the right side of the body where the liver is located. But for us, it's on the opposite side because we're looking at it anatomically. And if that doesn't make sense, that's fine. Don't worry about it. You don't need to know that. What I really wanted to point out here to you, and I'm going to use my mouse again. So this mass I'm talking about, this large object, this is the liver. Looks very healthy. There's a very healthy looking kidney. Here's another kidney. Now, if you compare the two, they look sort of different. There's this big sort of mass right here. This, by the way, is the spine that you're looking at, just so you can orient. So this is the posterior, this is the anterior. There's a mass on this kidney. They sort of depict it in this drawing here. Question in this frame, if you were to take it literally, is this benign or malignant? How are we going to know? Well, we learned in the other chapter that we take biopsies. So this is something likely to be biopsied. This is one of the reasons we do CTs. This is a CT image, and we see something like that. It definitely is going to prompt further investigation. What we were looking at there were kidneys, and we have a combining form for kidneys. We have a couple of them, actually. We're going to introduce the first one right now. It's renal. So renal is pertaining to a kidney. Suprarenal means above the kidney, as in the suprarenal glands. And you see down here in this drawing, we see to the far right a kidney that's been sort of dissected, so you can see the internal workings. And on the left, we see one that has not been dissected. And on top of that, this yellow mass is known as a suprarenal gland or an adrenal gland. Adrenal glands sit on top of each kidney, and they secrete hormones. This is where adrenaline is manufactured, essentially. And we all have adrenal glands. They're all located in that section. We're not going to learn a lot about it, but I do want you to know what they are and where they're located. That ends our first segment. Going to pause it here. I'll be back with you in a second with some more information about the adrenal glands.